Okay, so next up we have one of our trainees. So it's going to be Tori Stranges, who is a PhD candidate and sessional instructor in the Faculty of Health and Social Development at the University of British Columbia. Tori's research interests include health research funding trends, healthcare access, brain injury, and intimate partner violence in the 2S LGBTQ+ community. Tori has a particular interest in how survivors access health and community care. Tori is an Institute of Community Engaged Research Scholar. She sits on the Scientific Advisory Panel for the Gen Will Project and Community University Engagement Fund, is an affiliated researcher with the Institute for Social Connection, and a researcher with the Roundtable BC's LGBTQ2S mental health and substance networking space. Tori is a Brock University alumni graduating from the inaugural year of the Masters of Professional Kinesiology program. And Tori recently moved to the unceded traditional territory of the Sul Okanagan Nation, where she continues to play an active role in her community, advocating for social justice and change. So Tori, welcome. I'm gonna let you take over now.
Awesome. Let me just share my slides here. You never know if introduction is going to get shared or not. So sorry, everyone had to sit through that. Can everybody see my slides okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, awesome. A big thank you to Devine, Dragonfly, and Freya for sharing your stories. You know, it's a stark and really needed reminder of how important our work here is. You know, it's a bit of a tough act to follow. I really just want to hold space for the three of you and for the others who are sharing their stories. And really, really important and so grateful. So thank you. Thank you, Ella, for the introduction. My name's Tori. Today, I'm really excited to be able to share some of the work coming out of the University of British Columbia in Canada. I do want to make a little bit of a quick content warning. We're still going to be sort of talking about the same thing. So, you know, just holding space for the fact that a lot of these things that we're going to be talking about in the next 15 minutes are going to be, you know, affecting some of us a little bit more personally than others. I want to start today by expressing deep gratitude to the beautiful land of the people of the Silk Okanagan Nation, post-colonially referred to as Kelowna. It's about 4 hours east of Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada. This is the traditional, ancestral, and stolen territory that this research was done on. And I also want to recognize the many other nations and territories of which participants may have resided on while contributing to this important work. You can see sort of a map there of the Silk Okanagan Nation on the right-hand side, and you can see it does sort of break that US-Canada border, so important for our American folks as well. If you're curious about why we put the 2S at the front of the acronym with the forward dash, I get this question a lot. It's really to recognize that two-spirit shouldn't be conflated with other notions of Western gender and sexual orientation, and to really indicate that this is a term for Indigenous peoples specifically. You know, putting it at the front of the acronym really pays respect to the fact that Indigenous people came before we ascribe these sort of colonial terms of sex and gender. So I want to start today about talking about intimate partner violence caused brain injury a little bit more generally. Of course, we're all attending a conference over the next 2 days talking about IPV, so I won't spend too much time here, but really importantly, the World Health Organization reports that intimate partner violence affects 1 in 3 women globally. That's over 500,000 people in Canada alone, close to 200 million people across North America. And I recognize that people are joining from all over the world today. To put this into perspective, 1 in 8 people will experience breast cancer, and that's sort of a common household or cultural fact. You know, we have these national campaigns and awarenesses and foundations and fundraisers that you can sort of see in the top left-hand corner here, but nothing that really reflects the mainstream nature of breast cancer for intimate partner violence. Now, this isn't to say that breast cancer isn't important or doesn't deserve funding, resources, and attention. It's really just a tool to highlight how little we know about IPV, particularly in queer relationships. Of course, as we're learning and we'll continue to learn over the next 2 days, intimate partner violence has many consequences, including both negative physical and psychological health outcomes. You know, injuries from physical IPV vary from minor bruises and abrasions to multi-system trauma. And as Freya commented as well, some folks aren't here to share their stories. And what we're really starting to learn is that those who experience IPV may also experience a brain injury as a result of this physical or sexual violence, where injuries to the face, head, and neck, including non-fatal strangulation, are most common. Again, sort of everyone's kind of covering this topic, so I won't spend too much time here. What I really want to spend time today talking about is violence in 2S LGBTQ+ relationships or violence in queer relationships. A recent Canadian national data set reported that 68% of sexual minority people report experiencing some form of IPV in their lifetime. This may be due to unique risk factors such as minority stress, homophobia, public outness, stigma, discrimination, or HIV status that further elevate a queer person's risk of experiencing IPV in their relationship. Now, to sort of bring this back, we know that 1 in 3 women are experiencing IPV. We know that 1 in 8 folks are experiencing breast cancer. About 2/3 of the queer population are experiencing intimate partner violence. And of course, that's probably a mass underrepresentation. And we're really not sure what's happening in these situations. This is super interesting because if we consider the healthcare burden of intimate partner violence, and then we consider health funding allocation, less than 0.5% of research funding is allocated or awarded to projects that examine 2S LGBTQ health outcomes. This is from a different project that coded CIHR project and operating grants from 2009 to 2020 for the American folks on this conference. This is sort of like the R01 equivalent in Canada. So I read through 9,000 grants, read through those and coded them. And only 1 was awarded to look at intimate partner violence caused brain injury. And that was in 2019, to no surprise, my supervisor, Dr. Paul Van Donkler. So again, really just adding some perspective here to think about how large of an issue we all know this to be and how little funding and attention and research is really allocated to finding solutions. So what's the problem? I think probably by now it's quite obvious. But we know that 1 in 3 women are experiencing intimate partner violence. We know that injuries to the face, head, neck, non-fatal strangulation are most common. And we know that upwards of 92%, it sort of ranges, a lot of folks are experiencing a brain injury as a result of the violence they're experiencing. Similarly, we know that around 2/3 of people in queer relationships are experiencing intimate partner violence. Again, we know that injuries to the face, head, neck are most common. However, we're not sure what brain injury looks like in this population. So this project specifically kind of took a 2-pronged approach that you can see here on the right-hand side, both an online survey as well as semi-structured interviews that I'm going to give a really brief overview on today because we're short on time and I want to try and get through as much as we can. So as I mentioned, we operationalized an online survey first in the province of British Columbia. In this, we use the Brain Injury Severity Assessment or the BISA tool. This is an IPV-specific questionnaire that was developed to assess TBI symptoms. It's typically asked in an interview format. However, for the purpose of this online survey, we asked yes or no questions that indicated varying degrees of brain injury severity with the questions you can see here on this slide. We had 170 responses. You can see a bit of a demographic snapshot here, really able to capture the nuance and diversity of the 2S LGBTQ+ community with this survey. Again, sorry, I know I'm going quite fast through this, but we're short on time. I'm happy to answer any questions or connect after this. So we calculated prevalence rates and their corresponding Wilson score confidence intervals to estimate the proportion of individuals who experienced IPV and symptoms consistent with a brain injury. As you can see here on the slide, 84% expressed experiencing IPV in their lifetime when asked a simple yes or no question. Have you experienced IPV? Yes, no. This number drastically increased to 98%. You can see that sort of stat in the middle there when we compared the no responses to those that received a positive score on the BISA. So we compared those that said, no, I hadn't experienced IPV to some of the questions that were on that previous slide. And those people who said no to that first question said yes, that they had experienced some of those symptoms consistent with a brain injury using the BISA scale. So our findings revealed that our participants expressed experiencing IPV in their lifetime when explicitly asked specific questions about the types of abuse they experienced. I think it's important to note here that the survey that we did use, or the recruitment for the survey, used non-overt language. So we didn't explicitly say, oh, this survey is about violence. It was just titled Queer Brain Health in an effort, 1, for safety, but 2, to make sure that our sample wasn't biased. And then finally, an overwhelming 68% had experienced varying degrees of brain injury at the hands of an intimate partner, again, using that BISA scale. So to just go into our findings a little bit further here, I think, oh gosh, okay, we got to move quick. Let me just actually hop over that. Well, we can see there's a lot on this table, but on the far right-hand side, we can see for sexual orientation, we did a sex and gender-based analysis, so looked at both gender identity as well as sexual orientation. So for sexual orientation, those who identified as queer had significantly higher levels of exposure to a potential brain injury. And for gender identity, trans men had significantly lower exposure to potential brain injury compared to other gender identities. Now, I want to get to these interviews really quickly. We interviewed 14 service providers. 10 of those service providers identified as part of the 2S LGBTQ plus community, 2 of which had a lived experience of intimate partner violence caused brain injury, and 1 had experience of IPV. These interviews were analyzed using an interpretive description approach, and because of lack of time, we're just going to go through some quick notes that highlight 3 of the key findings here. So the first is that service provider organizations operate within a cisgender heteronormative understanding of IPV, really highlighting the sort of systemic inequities that frames the challenges that queer people experience when trying to access care following a brain injury. Christine shares here, I feel like that space, referring to domestic violence organizations, hasn't figured out exactly how to best serve diverse communities, specifically around gender identity and folks that are not in hetero-cis relationships. Second, due to this framing of IPV in a sort of cisgender heterosexual lens, 2S LGBTQ survivors often feel excluded and underserved. Bowser kind of points at this when he says, I felt like both my gender identity, but also my sexuality, I think that everything kind of made me not comfortable to express myself and comfortable to even utilize the service. It just didn't feel like that service was even going to take me seriously. And finally, survivors have limited access to services. So Charlie mentions this when he says, acknowledging the fact that there was not a singular organization that was able to help folks who were queer, but sort of just wanting or hoping that they'd be able to find one that was at least queer friendly or wouldn't discriminate against them. So these findings are really consistent with the literature that suggests a large portion of survivors, regardless of their gender identity or sexual orientation, may be subject to intimate partner violence caused brain injury. This has historically been misunderstood as less prevalent and less severe in queer relationships. And again, this is sort of exacerbated by the historical predominance of IPV discourse within the framework of cisgender heterosexual relationships, which really doesn't create a lot of space for queer survivors. And I think we're probably really close on time here, so I'll wrap it up. Again, I'm happy to answer questions via email, or if you want to connect later in the networking session, if you want to read more about some of the work, you can scan that QR code. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tori. It was a wonderful presentation. I feel like I learned a lot. And yeah, if you have any questions for Tori, please feel free to either paste them in the Q&A. Tori, if you want to go through and answer any questions, or if you want to reach out to Tori via email. And Tori, if you want to just put your email in the chat if you feel comfortable. And if not, Tori will be in the breakout room later today to learn even more. But yeah, thank you so much.